Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Rock Bottom Airsoft. It's good to see you again. If it's your first time here, then as always, it is good to see you and I hope you're going to stick around. Okay, well, welcome to our weekend video. As promised, we're back for another look at the Eshooter Kestrel V2 electronic trigger unit. Now, in my last video, we're going to get straight into it, but if you watched my previous video where I did an unboxing on this, if you haven't seen it already, I'll pop a link in the description for you so you can have a watch of that one. But I mentioned I was going to put it in the Vulcan Alloy series. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that because it turns out the Vulcan Alloy series has a proprietary metal selector plate which wouldn't work too well with this Kestrel version 2 because it needs a completely Tokyo Marui compatible box, which that is, but the selector plate isn't. So for that reason, I went with the Lancer Tactical LT19BL. We've installed it on this one. So a couple of provisos on that before we get into the features and how this actually works. What I would say is that installation was not straightforward. The instructions are very good, guys, really good. If you follow the instructions, you won't have any issues at all with installing the device to a standard TM version 2 gearbox. However, I did have to do quite a bit of modification to even this gearbox to ensure there were no problems with it. For example, there are 3 optical sensors that react to your selector plate when it moves. If your selector plate has a copper slug on it, like some of them have, then you don't need to modify the selector plate. But if it doesn't, then it needs to be reflective, so you have to have one of the stickers that we showed in the unboxing to make it reflective. And you also have to have a big enough opening so that none of the electronics on the base of the Kestrel V2 are either in contact with the gearbox or aren't visible. So for that reason, I had to file down quite a lot of the gearbox where it shows in order to install it and have it pick up the selector plate in all the positions it should pick it up. As well as that, you'll have 4 pins on many gearboxes, and in the instructions it does tell you that you have to take those off. Now, I used a Dremel multi-tool to chop them off and then sanded it down nice and smooth to get a nice finish. How you do that would be up to you yourself, but it is not just a straightforward fit. So what I would say, guys, is the instructions are very good. It was easy enough to install, but it did take me longer than installing a standard trigger unit or soldering in leads for a standard MOSFET. So do be aware of that, guys. I think that's the same problems you'll encounter with a lot of electronic trigger units because they are putting a circuit board within the version 2 box. It is not straightforward, so if you're not confident on building version 2 gearboxes or indeed working with the electronics on your replica, then it might be worth getting a tech to have a look at that. It's not an absolutely simple job, and then you have the added bits that you have to do, which is setting up the sensors and calibrating the sensors. You have to check that they're working, so you have to do a couple of takedowns of the gearbox that you wouldn't normally have to do to ensure that the sensors are correct. But once it's in and it's done, that is it, guys. So that's something to bear in mind. The instructions are really good, but the installation is not straightforward. It's not really simple. It's something you have to give a bit of time for to do. And then obviously you've got to be familiar with taking down your version 2 gearboxes because you do have to strip the box completely. You have to take everything out of the box. A couple of good things though about it is that you no longer need the spring on your selector plate. You no longer need a cut-off lever, so that's great. You no longer have a trigger trolley or a trigger stop to worry about, so that's all removed from the equation as it was. So it does make a lot of things simpler. You get rid of a lot of your sprung components and a lot of your fiddly components, and it gives you more options for triggers. If you can make out here, I've changed this one out for a blade trigger. Now that's the proviso there. I did get a comment on my previous video about doing an installation video. Now let me know in the comments, guys, if enough of you guys want me to do an installation video showing you exactly how to install one of these ETUs. I'm happy to do that, guys. I will do that for you. Like I say, it's a longer fur. There's a little bit of machining involved, a little bit of modification, so not straightforward. But overall, I was really impressed by how well the kit went in. I expected to have to do a lot more modification than I did. So with that out of the way, the last thing I would like to mention is, please do ignore the shimming on this gearbox, guys. When I was installing this, my shimming isn't up to scratch on this. I need to do some more work on this replica. It did sound really good before I took it apart to put this ETU in. But obviously, with me trying to get these videos out for you guys so you can have a look at it, I haven't spent as much time as I'd like shimming this, so it does not sound ideal. I think my motor height and shimming is a little bit off. So hopefully, you know, don't let that phase your opinion of the device, because I just wanted to show it you're working, and obviously I need to do a bit more work on this one. So I'm going to have to lose the gloves here, guys, so I can use my phone. Hopefully you can make out what I'm doing on the phone. I will cut to a little bit of video now showing you the features of the app and what it's got available, so you can see that up close, and then I'll come back to you here and I'll show you it working on the replica, okay? Okay guys, so here we are having a look at the Eshooter app, some of the features that are on there and what it can do. I've currently got this plugged in. Now remember, the app, you can't access anything on the electronic trigger unit without it getting power. So you do have to have a battery plugged in. So in order to have a look at some of the features, we click on the Eshooter app, which starts it up. And then the piece of kit that we're using here, obviously, is the Kestrel V2 electronic trigger units. We click on Kestrel E2 and you can see it's picked it up via Bluetooth straight away. Obviously you have to have Bluetooth turned on your phone. So we'll click on that and that will pick it up, and then it's going to ask for our password. So I will put my password in. You can change the password. The default password, I believe, is 88888. But you can change that password, which obviously I have. And that then brings you to the dashboard. And as you can see there, it gives you a bit of information. We've got BB counter, tells us how many rounds we've fired. Your rate of fire, it'll measure the rate of fire. I believe it does that by sector gear sensoring, so it knows every rotation of the sector gear should be 1 round. So obviously that should give you your rounds per second. Trigger response, it measures that as well. The temperature, so currently it's showing a minimum temperature of 19. The average temperature is 20 degrees Celsius and the maximum temperature is 20 degrees Celsius. This is all just information. It doesn't really tell us much about it. It isn't giving us a current reading at the moment because we haven't fired the replica with it connected as of yet. And also it gives us a voltage there of the battery. So we've got a minimum of 6.8, last read at 7.9 and a maximum of 8.2 voltage. And it also gives us the power up time. I believe it'll run for an hour and then it automatically shuts off if you've been inactive for any longer than that. But it does give us what the battery has remaining, which that's quite handy. So it tells us that there's 82% left in this battery. It's a lithium-ion Titan battery I've got plugged in, a 7.4 volt battery. Now it also gives you your version there. I have done an over-the-air update on the firmware on this. So that is the most current up-to-date version available. If you want to reset all of these previously stored readings here, you just hit the reset button and that'll put it back to factory standards. I believe as well that that will also alter your settings. So if we go into settings, we can see what's available. So let's click on settings there. Now we first of all have our selector settings. So we've got safe mode. That is always set to safe mode. But as you can see, semi, if we click on it, we can change the semi to act as safe. We can change it to act as auto. We can change it to burst fire. We can change it to AEG mode, which is what I mentioned earlier, that if you pull the trigger slightly, it'll do a single shot. And if you pull it all the way back, it'll go into full auto, a bit like a stereo AEG. You can have binary trigger, which is what I currently have my auto set to, and that's where you pull the trigger, it fires 1 shot, and when you release the trigger, it fires 1 shot. So you get 2 shots for each trigger pull if you like. And also we can put it on sniper mode. Sniper mode is where there's a delay in shots. It creates a delay to simulate a bolt pull. Not something I would use, but you can set it on that if you want, and with pre-cocking it adds a level of realism. But I like to leave my semi-auto selector switch on semi, so we leave it at that. So whatever you select, you then click done and it saves that. Now as you can see, auto mode I currently have set to binary, but you have the same list of options to change that to whatever you want as well, but I'll leave mine on binary. Your next option down is burst mode. You can change the burst all the way up to 10 round burst, and everything in between all the way down to 3 round burst. So you can pretty much set your burst fire to whatever you want between 3 and 10. The trigger, you can change your trigger sensitivity. I currently have my trigger set to 3, so you can set it at really high sensitivity, which is 1, or you can set it to really low sensitivity, which is 5. I've got mine set right in the middle at number 3. Next, we can go on to some of the functions we can use with the gearing, with your sector gear. You can turn pre-cocking mode on or off. I don't bother with pre-cocking mode, so I have that turned off. Pre-cocking is where it holds the piston back, so I have pre-cocking turned off. But basically what that is, as soon as you pull the trigger, it releases the piston forward, and then it'll hold the piston back ready for the next shot. And what that basically means is it gives you a bit more trigger response, a bit more realism, because the piston is held back ready to go. As soon as you pull the trigger, the piston goes forward. There's no need to cycle. You can boost the pre-cocking for how much it holds it back. Rate of fire control, you can alter the percentage of your rate of fire to reduce it. I currently have that switched off. But again, that's more for realism. If you want to create a more realistic rate of fire, or if you're having issues where you need to reduce the rate of fire, you do have that option available in a percentage. Sniper delay mode, again, I don't bother with that. That's all to do with the sniper mode that I mentioned earlier, for adding a bit of realism, adding a bit of delay when you use as a sniper or a DMR. If you want to simulate a bolt cocking process or something like that, it'll allow you to do that, but it's not something I use. Magazine mode, again, is something I wouldn't use, but one of the features of installing this ETU is it does have a little micro switch that goes into your magazine well, and the idea is it will allow you to fire 30 rounds, and then after 30 rounds you'll have to drop the magazine and then reinsert the magazine in order for it to allow you to fire again, to simulate a 30 round magazine and simulate mag changes, just to give you a little bit more realism. Not something I use or would use in game, so I have that turned off, and that's on or off. Next, you can set your gear ratios. Now, it will allow you to do 18:1, it'll allow you to do 13:1, that's on single sector gears, and it'll allow you to set to a DSG 9:1. Now in this particular gearbox, I'm using a standard gear set that's 18:1, so I'll leave that on 18:1. But if you did fit a 13:1 single sector gear, it will allow for that, and if you have a 9:1 DSG, it will allow for that as well. So remember, if you have any other gear sets other than that, then obviously you could have problems. But I will stick with my 18:1 on standard. As you could see there, if I try and change it, it'll start trying to calibrate itself again. But I've already done the calibration on this one. Next, we come to battery. You can have battery protection switched on for LiPo or life batteries. I've got it switched to LiPo, and as you can see, it asks you to unplug and plug the battery back in again just so it can reset itself. But I have mine set to LiPo because I'm using a lithium ion battery or a LiPo. I don't use life cells. The LiPo is fine to have switched on using a lithium ion battery. That shouldn't cause you any problems. You can see that it's picked up that the battery cells is 2, which is correct. It's a 7.4 volt battery, so it's 2 cell. Obviously it's slightly different with lithium ion, but we won't get into that. It will work absolutely fine for you with the lithium ion batteries. And also I've got low battery warning, which you can have that switched on or off, and I've got that switched on, which I've just switched off. Now I've got it switched back on again. And then at the bottom there you have the option to change the password should you want to. Then the next menu that we have on here is the sensor. In the sensors, we can put it on sensor test mode. So if you flick that switch, that's you on test mode. Now at the moment I have the selector switch at safe. As you can see, if I flick it to semi, it will go to semi. You can see that here. and if I switch it to auto, it goes to auto. So we know that that optical sensor is picking up the position of the selector plate, which is great. To put that back to safe. The trigger sensors, it should pick up all of them. So that's a very light pull, bit more, bit more, bit more, and all the way. So you've got all 5 sensors are picking up on the trigger. So you know that those sensors are working. The gear sensors, you set that up when you're installing the device, but basically it should tell you when there's a tooth and when there's a break in your sector gear, so you know that it's correctly calculating the number of teeth and also correctly working out one rotation of the sector gear, which a lot of the functions rely on. And then finally you have calibration mode, and basically with that all you do is you flick that switch above there to on. It'll start calibration, it calibrates all the sensors, and then after that you unplug your battery, plug it back in, and you should be good to go. We can turn sensor test mode off there, and that's pretty much the settings, guys. So as you can see, there's loads and loads of options of what you can set up on there and what you can do. On your dashboard, you've got loads of information that you can use. The current readings, I found various readings. The max current is obviously startup and is for an absolute split second. So I would take those current readings with a pinch of salt. You're much better taking a current reading via a multimeter if you're able to, or any kind of current reading device. But again, it will give you an idea of how much current you are drawing there. And then finally, if we come out of here, if you did want to update the device, you can go back to your main menu and you go to setting, and you can see there that it's got OTA updates. You click on that and then you click on the device and it updates it for you via the internet and via the Bluetooth. It's as simple as that, guys. So basically a really, really easy system to use, easy to log into. I've not had any issues with it picking up my device. I've not had any issues with connection issues, and it gives me plenty of information that I might need, and an absolute wealth of settings, as you can see there, guys. So what we'll do is we can have a look at the replica firing and give you an idea of how those settings relate to it. Okay, welcome back with me, guys. Okay, I've lost my gloves, unfortunately. I feel naked without them. So what we need to do is we open the app earlier. I've shown you that working on the screen. So we go into the app. Hopefully you make out what I'm doing. And that's us in the app, guys. So, like I say, we're ready to go. So you can hear it sounds a bit screechy, guys, but that's semi. If you can make out there how sensitive that is on 3, you see, pretty sensitive, not bad at all. Now, if we have a look at the settings, you can see I've got auto currently set to binary. So if I flick to auto, that's binary trigger for you guys. If I change that back to, let's say, auto, there you go. A bit of a problem with the anti-reversal latch on this at the moment as well, guys. It's not running perfect, but like I said, there's a bit more work to do on it. So that was auto. If we want, we can set it to the AEG mode that I mentioned earlier. So one shot with a slight pull, pull it again, goes to full auto. And what about if we put it on burst? So we're on burst, we're currently set at 3 round burst, guys. So it does 3 rounds. But if we want, we can set it to 5 round burst. It does 5 rounds. But I think 3 rounds is more than enough for me on a burst mode. And then we can have it just on auto. But like I say, guys, I kind of like binary trigger. So I'm going to leave it on binary there. Trigger sensitivity, at the moment we've got it set at 3. If I put it at high trigger sensitivity, let's go back on semi to try this. You can see that is ultra sensitive and it's really quick. But I like to have it set middling, guys, so I'll leave it on 3. You've got the same option settings on your semi mode. And as we say, you can have pre-cocking on or off. We have to recalibrate for pre-cocking. Not something I'm going to use. But there you go, guys. You can see that it works. You can see that everything is working as it should. The app is pretty intuitive. You can see that it's given us a rate of fire there. The average rate of fire is 10. 10 rounds per second, which that's not brilliant, that, guys. As I say, this replica needs stripping down again, a bit more work. It's kind of a rush job putting it back together to get this out for you guys, just to show that the ETU does work. So we have got that. We've got a trigger response for a minimum and average and our maximum in milliseconds of how quick it responds. You can see the temperature there, the inside of the gearbox. We had a max temperature of 24 degrees, and you can see our current draw. So the average semi-current draw was 14 amps. It was pretty good, guys. The average burst was 16 amps. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it gives you a max draw of 63 amps. Now that's drawing at startup of the motor. You can sometimes get peaks and troughs, but that will be literally for a split second, guys. If it was pulling that for any length of time, as I've seen people mentioned in forums and things like that and on social media, it would melt your wires, guys. You couldn't draw that. You'd need wires that were massively thick, okay? It also tells us that battery's got 77% left in it, and we've had the device running for 28 minutes. So there you go, guys. We've had a look at the app and the features that are in there. You can see that it's working. I've given you an idea of installation. Like I say, installation... It's hard to describe, guys. Installation is not hard, but you do have to have a good working knowledge of a V2 gearbox. You have to be confident at stripping one down and putting one back together. There are delicate items on the PCB itself for the Kestrel V2, as there would be with any electronic trigger unit. You know, there's capacitors, there's small processors on there, and obviously you've got the optical sensors themselves. You don't want to break any of those off and damage them. So you need to be confident of putting one of those in and also moving around those components, making sure your wires are routed correctly, because you don't want to pinch any wires. You don't want those issues, guys. So that's something to be aware of if you do look to install one of these. So overall, so far, I'm impressed, guys, with the Kestrel V2. For the money that you pay, it seems to have an equal number of features to other competitors on the market. And it is affordable, and so far, like I say, it's done exactly what it advertises on the box. It does exactly what it says on the tin, so there's no problems there. Installation is not straightforward, it's not easy, but you know, it's not exactly difficult either. It just requires a bit of modification. The replica works, the firing system works, all the sensors have been picked up. I didn't have any problems with extraneous light getting in or anything like that, or it failing so far. But as you guys all know that follow the channel, I do like to test things in the field. To me, just testing it here, I fired a few shots off against targets, giving it around about 500 BBs through the replica so far, which is more than I'm willing to do normally with that screechy gearbox sound. I need to sort that out. But like I say, yeah, you know, that it's survived all that and it's working fine. So the next step will be to try it in the field. So next time I'm at a game at Tazball, at my home site, I will give this some heavy use, and if the Kestrel V2 is still performing as it is now, then I would definitely say I'd be happy to recommend it and say that it works okay. All the instructions, like I say, guys, as I said in the unboxing, are brilliant. They're really good. If you follow those instructions by the letter, you can't go wrong. But just make sure you are confident at taking down a version 2 based replica and gearbox, and then if you do encounter, such as I did, any instances where you need to make some modification to the shell, you can do that with confidence and without any problems. So I hope you've enjoyed that, guys. I hope that's given you an idea of what's available with the Kestrel V2. If you did like the video, then please do drop a like on it. And as always, if you've been enjoying my series of videos, then do get subscribed to the channel. That way you won't miss any of my uploads. But apart from that, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.